Hi, Dr. Versalati here. In this screencast, we're going to look more closely at noun phrases by looking at the classifying and identifying work that articles do in an English noun phrase. Our learning objectives are to review the meaning expressed by the use of the definite and indefinite article in phrases and sentences, and discourse, including identifying the underlying linguistic patterns we may find. And we're going to do that by reviewing the subfunctions of the definite and indefinite article. We're doing that because the articles are the prototypical determiner in English. So it's good when we're learning a concept to look at the prototypical examples first before we stretch the concept a little bit. Okay, so Yule describes the choice of the English article, definite or indefinite, as whether we want to classify the referent, meaning just generally we're talking about one of a set, like the set of all cars. We have a car. We don't the referent, which particular car in the real world that we're referring to, is not definite, it's not specific. It's just one of those, the class of object labeled car, versus identifying work. Hey, get into the car, where the car refers to not just any old car in the world, but a specific member of the group or set of cars in the world. We can pinpoint which one both the speaker and the hearer knows exactly which specific referent we mean. Okay, so for this, we're going to look more closely, we're going to look at the classifying and identifying work in an activity. In this activity, in this handout, we're going to look at the determiners in the given sentence. I recommend that we take the time to actually circle the determiner and underline its noun. But the more important work that we're going to do in the screencast is compare the sentence horizontally to analyze how that article is doing the subfunction work in this sentence. So let's look at this first example. If I said, a woman arrived at the party, the subfunction here, a is the article, woman is the noun that we're talking about. The subfunction that Yule has identified is called not yet identified. We would say a woman arrived at the party if in the story that we're telling, the woman has not yet been identified. And now moving horizontally, when I noticed her, the woman left. So in this case, Yule says because woman, the referent in the real world, has already been identified, we use the definite article. We can identify which woman the speaker means. Very similar to that is the introducing and the reintroducing subfunction that Yule describes. In a small village near a river is introducing a new referent to the discourse, like if you were telling a story. But in that same story, if later on you said, meanwhile, back in the village, it would be a reintroducing. Let's move on to the describing and the distinguishing or contrasting. When we have some describing words like a big, mean, ugly dog, we can use the indefinite article. There's a mean, big, ugly dog here. But if we're distinguishing or contrasting, we might say something like, I've seen the dog, but not the cat. Distinguishing which of the reference in the real world we have seen and which we haven't. There are other subfunctions here that I think are explained by the example. Some I want to go over a little more. Unmodified, it's just a fact. We wouldn't really think of a time to say it's it is the fact. That's a little bit odd. But if you have a noun phrase that's post-modified, meaning it's modified after the noun, the fact that she's here is odd. Instead of a fact, it becomes the fact, because that she's here is really identifying which fact we mean. And the fact that it's post-modified helps us realize that subfunction of why we can, the article is doing identifying work. The last one I want to go over, comparing the classifying and identifying, is objects as category members versus shared knowledge. If I said to you, I bought a house, I'm saying that I bought one in the whole set, the whole class of houses. But if my very next sentence was, I had to replace the roof. Now here, I haven't introduced the idea that my house had a roof. I didn't say I bought a house, my house has a roof. I had to replace the roof. That would be weird to have that middle sentence, because we have shared cultural knowledge that houses have roofs. So even though this is the first time it's been introduced, the idea, the noun, the referent, the roof has been introduced, and it's not post-modified or anything like that, we can still use the identifying. We know which roof we mean because houses tend to have one roof. Okay, so this is for you to consider. In step 4 here, it says, what subfunctions would you create for the blanks for no differentiating needed? Now, there are times when in English we don't use any article, and that's also an important thing for people to learn, when to use them and when not. So the way to think of these subfunctions for yourself is to compare very similar sentences. So we have the example, I like movies. Well, why didn't I say I like a movies? Can you think of the subfunction? It's, do you know specifically what movie I like? No, it's still indefinite, but it's a plural, right? So what about I bought candy? Do you know exactly which candy I bought? No, but it's, if you compare I bought a candy versus I bought the candy, there's some, there must be some identifying, already identified, or we already know which candy, the hearer already knows which candy we mean. So what would this reason be? Well, this is a mass noun. And what about there's Dr. Versalati? Why don't we say there's a Dr. Versalati or there's the Dr. Versalati? Well, maybe the capitalization gave you, but this is a proper noun. The last one I gave you, because this is a little bit harder. This is a little quirk of English. When we say things like, she went to college after high school, there are two nouns there. Neither of them have an article, college and high school. And we could say, she went to the college or she went to a college, but that doesn't really mean the same thing, because when we say she went to college after high school, it refers to the activity of going to college rather than the specific place. That would be conveyed if it had the article a or the before college. Okay, the rest of this activity asks you to think about when other determiners are used. Is it are these determiners doing identifying or classifying work? Can you think of the exact referent that the speaker is saying if you were in that context? And then the second page of this activity gives you a chance to practice this on your own with an authentic language example. In this, this is an excerpt from Circus in Winter by Kathy Day on page 70. And what the activity is to identify the first 10 nouns or 20 nouns if you want more practice, and go ahead and make a list. For each, you can bold the determiner or circle, underline the noun, and identify which type of determiner it is. And using these exact subfunctions that we talked about, identify which main function, classifying, identifying, no differentiating needed, and which subfunction most closely connects to that real language example. Analyze language in authentic use. So, for instance, I started at the end, but I noticed that this sentence had 3 nouns: amazement, mirth, and awe. I wanted to give you this example because sometimes students focus on determiners instead of nouns here, and even though these nouns do not have determiners, they're still nouns and noun phrases. And these nouns do not have determiners, so this is no differentiation needed. So which of these subfunctions would that be? Indefinite plural, mass noun, proper noun, refers to an activity, not location. Of those subfunctions, these seem to be maybe mass nouns, non-count nouns. We wouldn't say amazements, mirths, and awes necessarily. Okay, so with this activity, you can practice, and you can see my examples on the assignment, the graded assignment description.